Hey Hufflepuffers!
Welcome to the Hufflepuffers Podcast
With Tasha
and Becca. Hey Hufflepuffers, we wanted to come to you with a funny intro today for episode 4. Yes, but we are so bad
at messing up.
Yes, we messed up our messing up. That's how bad we are. Like seriously, why do we have a podcast?
Because we're great.
Yes, we are. Okay, so anyway, we're going to start off with the Quibbler. The Quibbler.
For those who don't remember, the news about the channel and the Wizarding World news.
Sure. Oh, and by the way, so our first piece of news is that I apologize for all the cringiness in our cringes.
Yeah.
Like the Quibbler. I regret that already.
Yeah.
Because we were just watching episode 3 back.
Cringe.
Because guess what? Tasha forgot to take notes about her character.
Listen, sometimes if you listen to what I said, you'll understand why I didn't take notes. All I said was she loved magic.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
And we skipped the rest of the video because we were so cringed already. Okay, and I have one more piece of news. What was it? Oh my gosh, I forget.
Was it?
Oh, we are coming to you from a new studio for the day.
Yes.
So we will not have to sing at the Yule Ball. And I know you're all going like, wah, wah, wah.
No dancing today.
But it's fine because we will sing you a Christmas carol anyway.
Yes.
We will sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everywhere.
Yes.
Welcome to the future.
Yes, we are coming to you from our first episode of 2021. Okay, now my voice is exhausted. You take over now.
Okay, well, there's not too much news we have in the Wizarding World. There's not much news there either at the moment. So I think we'll move on to Hogwarts Library.
Yes.
My favorite segment where we get to read.
Yeah. Oh, and guess
I
who
get
got
to
the
read.
Hogwarts Library for Christmas? With all 3 of the books that they mentioned. Tales of the Beetle and the Bard, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find, and Quidditch Through the Ages. And I'm so excited to read them.
Making Tasha slightly jealous because I don't have Quidditch Through the Ages. But I have my favorite Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yet she still hasn't read Beetle and the Bard.
I just want to read Rabbity.
So
Okay.
we will tell you more about those books. Maybe after the first book we can read a bit more about those.
Yeah. What letter am I on? I mean, what chapter am I on?
Letter.
Keeper
Okay.
of the Keys?
We've had 3 episodes. That means that, hold on. We're on chapter 3 then. Because the first episode was just an intro, right?
Okay.
Yes. This is our amazing
and we're
memories.
doing a double read today.
Yes, double
We
chapter.
apologize if we ever read the same chapter twice. But
Yeah.
it's the Vanishing Glass. I'm pretty sure we read the Vanishing Glass.
What was the Vanishing Glass?
That's when the snake disappeared.
Okay, what was... No, we did not read the Vanishing Glass.
That's
remember?
chapter 2, though.
It is?
Yeah.
What?
Chapter 3 is Letters from Now.
Oh, I thought that said 4. Yeah,
Oh, no.
we read
Okay.
the Vanishing Glass. And I remember because I was reading about the zoo and then I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I apologize for my voice being so that day. But, I've got a super stuffy nose all day, every day.
Okay.
Big adenoids.
Ready,
No,
everyone?
me.
You ready, Ryan? Chapter 3. The Letters
From
from
no one.
The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of the cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and Dudley had already broken his new sign camera, crashed his remote control airplane, and first time on his racing bike knocked down old Miss Fig as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited his house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and the stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school. And for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had a place at Uncle Vernon's old school, Smelting. Piers Polkitt was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High. The local comprehensive, Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's heads down the toilet first day of Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilet never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran, before Dudley could work out what he'd said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his smelting universe, leaving Harry at Mrs. Fig. Mrs. Fig wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd had it for several years. That evening, Dudley paraded around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Smelter's boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobby sticks used for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and she couldn't believe it was her Ickle Duddykins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought,
We have a special guest. Say hi.
Hey! Hey!
Hi, special guest. Welcome to the Hufflepuffers Podcast.
She's showing you her magic trick. Can you see it?
Cool.
Oh, yes.
What's your magic trick?
She is getting a pencil and putting it in. Nana would know this trick. Like the old days with the actual normal film, when they used to have film. And then you stick the pencil in the hole, and then it winds the film back up, and the film comes out of the case.
Cool.
So Nana buys those those nail things, Rebecca?
Yeah.
So she pulled it all out, so now I stuck a pencil in there and then winded it and then it pulled it all back in. So that's her new trick.
Wow,
Awesome.
good job, Ava.
Good job.
We just can't find the pencil.
Wow, another trick.
Yeah. Wait,
Yeah, haven't got lots of magic tricks up my sleeve, apparently.
thank you for coming to our episode.
Have fun with your podcast for today. You all showered now and ready to go?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
what's your trick? Oh, you're doing it. First time. Good job. Here, Mom, take it. I'll take a video of her doing it and then send it to you.
Yay.
See it.
Do you want to say goodbye to the viewers?
Alright. She's too busy taking pictures now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She's important over here,
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that was Eva. Okay, and back to the book. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen next morning when Harry went in for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in grey water. What's this? He asked Aunt Petunia, her lips tightened as they always did if he dared to ask a question. Your new school uniform, she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. Oh, he said, I didn't realize it had to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things gray for you. It'll look just like everyone else when I've finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High. Like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his melting stick, which he carried everywhere on the table. And they heard the click on the letter box and flop of letters on the doormat. Get the post, Dudley, said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. Make Harry get it. Get the post, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting sticks and went to get the post. 3 things lay on the Matt, a postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who was holidaying on the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, his heart twanging like a giant elastic band. No one ever in his whole life had written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he never even got rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winning, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and the address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand trembling, Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake surrounding the large letter H. "Hurry up, boy!" shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing, checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, sat down, and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped over the postcard. "Marge is ill," he informed Impudent. "Ate a funny whelk." "Dad!" said Dudley suddenly. "Dad, Harry's got something!" Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who'd be writing to you?" sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights, and it didn't stop there. Within seconds it was the grayish white of old porridge. "Petunia!" he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon!" They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with his smelting stick. "I want to read that letter," he said loudly. "I want to read it," said Harry fiercely, "as it is mine." "Get out, both of you," croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside its envelope. Harry didn't move. "I want my letter," he shouted. "Let me see it," demanded Dudley. "Out!" roared Uncle Vernon, and he took both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their necks and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack between the door and the floor. "Vernon," Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, "look at that address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house?" "Watching? Spying might be following us," muttered Uncle Vernon wildly. "But what should we do, Vernon? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want—" Harry could see Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. "No," he said finally. "No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's best. We won't do anything. But I'm not having one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in we'd stamp out that dangerous nonsense?" That evening, when he got back from work, Uncle Vernon did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. "Where's my letter?" said Harry the moment Uncle Vernon had squeezed through the door. "Who's writing to me?" "No one. It was addressed to you by mistake," said Uncle Vernon shortly. "I burned it." "It was not a mistake," said Harry angrily. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" yelled Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and then forced his face into a smile, which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry. About this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking you're really getting a bit big for it. We think it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom." "Why?" said Harry. "Don't ask questions," snapped his uncle. "Take this stuff upstairs now." The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, one where Dudley slept, and one where Dudley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard to his room. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything in here was broken. The months-old fine camera was lying on top of a small working tank Dudley had once driven over next to his dog. In the corner was Dudley's first-ever television set, which he put his foot through when his favorite program had been canceled. There was a large bird cage, which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was up on a shelf with the end all bent because Dudley had sat on it. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in the room that looked as though they'd never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. "I don't want him in there. I need that room. Make him get out." Harry sighed and stretched out on the bed. Yesterday he'd have given anything to be up here. Today he'd rather be back in his cupboard with that letter than up here without it. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He screamed, whacked his father with his melting stick, sick on purpose, kicked his mother, and thrown his tortoise through the greenhouse roof, and he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time yesterday and bitterly wishing he'd opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the post arrived, Uncle Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go get it. They heard him banging things with a smelting stick all the way down the hall. Then he shouted, "There's another one! Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 perfect jive." With a strangled cry, Uncle Vernon leapt from his seat and ran down the hall, Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dudley to get to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got hit a lot by the smelting stick, Uncle Vernon straightened up, gasping for breath, and with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. "Go to your cupboard. Your bedroom," he waved at Harry. "Dudley, go. Just go." Harry walked round and round his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know he hadn't received his first letter. Surely that meant they'd try again, and this time he'd make sure they didn't fail. He had a plan. The repaired alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock the next morning. Harry turned it off quickly and dressed silently. He mustn't wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs without turning on any of the lights. He was going to wait for the postman on the corner of Perfect Drive and get the letter for number 4 first. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark hall towards the front door. Ah! Harry leapt into the air. He trod on something big and squishy on the doormat. Something alive.
Amazing.
Lights clicked on upstairs, and to his horror, Harry realized that the big squashy something had been Uncle's face. Uncle Vernon had been lying at the foot of the front door in a sleeping bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly what he'd been trying to do. He shouted at Harry for about half an hour, and then told him to go and make a cup of tea. Harry shuffled miserably off into the kitchen, and by the time he got back, the post had arrived right into Uncle Vernon's lap. Harry could see 3 letters addressed in green ink. He began, but Uncle Vernon was tearing the letter into pieces before his eyes. Uncle Vernon didn't go to work that day. He stayed at home and nailed up the letter box. "See," he explained to Aunt Petunia through her mouthful of nails, "if they can't deliver them, they'll just give up." "I'm not sure that will work, Vernon." "Oh, these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia. They're not like you and me," said Uncle Vernon, trying to knock in a nail with a piece of fruit cake Aunt Petunia had just bought him. On Friday, no fewer than 12 letters arrived for Harry. As they couldn't go through the letter box, they had been pushed under the door, slotted through the sides, and a few even forced through the small window in the downstairs toilet. Uncle Vernon stayed at home again. After burning all the letters, he got out a hammer and nails and boarded up the cracks around the front and back doors so no one could go out. He hummed tiptoe through the tulips as he worked, and jumped at small noises. On Saturday, things began to get out of hand. 24 letters to Harry found their way into the house, rolled up and hidden inside each of the 2 dozen eggs that their very confused milkman had handed Aunt Petunia through the living room window, while Uncle Vernon made furious telephone calls to the post office in the dairy trying to find someone to complain to. Aunt Petunia shredded the letters in her food mixer. Who on earth wants to talk to you this badly?" Dudley asked Harry in amazement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon sat down at the breakfast table looking tired and rather ill, but happy. "No posts on Sunday," he reminded them happily as he spread marmalade on his new favorite. "No darn letters today." Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney as he spoke, and caught him sharply on the back of the head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air trying to catch one. "Out! Out!" Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. When Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces, Uncle Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and floor. "That does it," said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly, but pulling great tufts out of his mustache at the same time. "I want you all back here in 5 minutes, ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments." He looked so dangerous with half his mustache missing that no one dared to argue. 10 minutes later they had wrenched their way through the boarded-up doors and were in the car, speeding towards the motorway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him round the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, video, and computer in his sports bag. They drove, and they drove. Even Aunt Petunia did not dare ask where they were going. Every now and then Uncle Vernon would take a sharp turning and drive in the opposite direction for a while. Shake him off, he would mutter whenever he did this. They didn't stop to eat or drink it all day. By nightfall, Dudley was howling. He never had such a bad day in his life. He was hungry, he'd missed 5 television programs he wanted to see, and he'd never gone so long without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Vernon stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel on the outskirts of a big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and damp, musty sheets. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the lights of passing cars and wondering. They ate stale cornflakes and cold tinned tomatoes on toast for breakfast next day. They had just finished when the owner of the hotel came over to their table. "Excuse me, but is one of you Mr. H. Potter? Only I got about an 100 of these at the front desk." She held up a letter so they could read the green ink out of it. "Mr. H. Potter, room 17, Railview Hotel, Cokeworth." Harry made a grab for the letter, but Uncle Vernon knocked his hand out of the way. The woman stared. "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly and following her from the dining room. "Wouldn't it be better just to go home, dear?" Aunt Petunia suggested timidly hours later, but Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove them into the middle of the forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, and got back in the car, and off they went again. The same thing happened in the middle of a plowed field, halfway across the suspension bridge, and at the top of a multi-story car park. "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" Dudley asked Aunt Petunia dully late that afternoon. Uncle Vernon had parked at the coach, locked them all inside the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Great drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniffled. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great Humberto's on tonight. I want to stay somewhere with a television." Monday. This reminded Harry of something. If it was Monday, and you could usually count on Dudley to know the days of the week because of television, then tomorrow, Tuesday, was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthdays were never exactly fun. Last year, the Dursleys had given him a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks. Still, you were an 11 every day. Uncle Vernon was back, and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when she asked what he'd bought. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone, out." It was very cold outside the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at what looked like a large rock way out at the sea. Perched on top of the rock was the most miserable little shack you could imagine. One thing was certain. There was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," said Uncle Vernon gleefully, clapping his hands together, "and this gentleman kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless old man came ambling up to them, pointing with a rather wicked grin at an old rowing boat bobbling in the iron-gray water below them. "I've already got us some rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing in the boat. Icy sea spray and rain crept down their necks, and a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock, where Uncle Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to the broken-down house. The inside was horrible. It smelled strongly of seaweed, the wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Vernon's ration turned out to be a packet of crisps, each, and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but the empty crisp packet just smoked and shriveled up. "Thanks. Could do with some of those letters now, eh?" he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought nobody stood a chance of reaching them here in a storm to deliver post. Harry privately agreed, though the thought didn't cheer him up at all. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them. Brave from the high waves splattered the walls of the hut, and a fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room, and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Vernon went off to the lumpy bed next door, and Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could, and to curl up under the thinnest, most ragged blanket. The storm raged more and more ferociously as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. The lightened dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat wrist, told Harry he had been 11 and 10 minutes' time. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dursleys would remember at all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes to go. Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Privet Drive would be so full of letters when they got back that he'd be able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes to go. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes to go. What was the funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea? 1 minute to go, and he'd be 11. 30 seconds. 20. 10. 9. Maybe he'd wake Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The whole shack shivered, and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. That's the end of chapter 3.
So, I'm not sure if you guys heard about yesterday. I was aunt and younger cousin, by the way. And So that chapter was longer than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. So double chapter episode is going to be hard, so we may have to skip our fan segment for the day. Because last week we had nothing to talk about anyway.
Mm-hmm. But I think we should talk about chapter 3 before we move on to chapter 4.
Okay, so
First of all,
chapter 3.
I don't understand Vernon's plan at all. Because his whole thing is that, he doesn't want people to know it's magic because he doesn't want people to think he's weird. But aren't their neighbors going to think he's weird because he's just rented a boat and randomly went into a shack and he's literally going crazy?
Yeah, but it's Vernon, so...
Yeah, literally nothing he does make sense. And Harry, he makes my heart hurt so much. I feel so bad for him. Like, when he's like... What was it? When he was like... I just want to be back in my cupboard. I was like, Harry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, we're eating cookies.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're very good.
we're going to sponsor Pillsbury. Buy Pillsbury Christmas cookie sugar cookie thing.
Mm-hmm. We're not
You can also
actually
get
being
them.
sponsored by them, but,
Yeah.
they're really good, so you may as well buy them.
Yeah, I used the wrong word. I mean, we're having an advertisement. This is our advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, buy Pillsbury cookies because they are so good. You put them on your cookie tray and in the oven for 10 minutes. And then eat your reindeers.
Yay. Did you have anything to say about chapter 3? Mostly just lots of letters.
I love the Lego Harry Potter game I play. I love the scene where all the letters come flooding down the chimney and hit Vernon in the head.
That's funny.
Because the letter just pops up behind him, and then the whole house had fell in a second later.
I love the scene in the movie where Harry's like jumping up to catch all the letters, but
And
it
it's
does.
Like raining.
Yeah,
It's raining.
I love it.
Letters. I don't see why he didn't just grab one and run, though.
It makes a lot more sense than this because there was falling, so he was like, I'm going to grab one, and then he was shoved out of the room. But honestly, I'm kind of glad they just let him just keep jumping up because it was so fun. Okay.
But he should have grabbed one and ran. Duh.
Yeah, he really should have. So, I'm going to start chapter 4 now, so everyone get your books out. One out. Chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. Where's the cannon? He said stupidly. There was a crash behind them and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hand. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. Who's there? He shouted. I warn you, I'm armed. There was a pause. Then, smash! The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard, but you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all the hair.
I wonder who that is.
The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey. He strode over.
Okay, that's a perfect voice.
He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. Budge up, you great lump, said to the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching terrified behind Uncle Vernon. An ears, Harry, said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle eyes were crinkled in a smile. Last time I saw you, you was only a baby, said the giant. You look a lot like your dad, but you got your mum's eyes. Uncle Vernon made a funny, rasping noise. I demand that you leave at once, sir, he said. You were breaking and entering. Aw, shut up, Dursley, you great prince,
I'm tired. This is awesome.
said the giant. He reached over. Stop being Dobby. She's hitting her head against the... Okay. Said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hand, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into a corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. Anyway, Harry, said the giant, turning his back on the Dursley, a very happy birthday to ya. Got some for ya. Here, I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right. From an inside pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with Happy Birthday Harry written on it in green icing. Harry,
Happy birthday, Harry.
probably. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth, and what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubus Hagrid, keeper of the keys and ground at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea, then, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. "I'm not saying no to someone stronger if you got it, mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled crisp packets in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of the pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squashy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of something amber liquid, which he took a swig from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of sound and smell of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the first 6 juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Your great pudding of the sun don't need fattening any more, Dudley. Don't worry." He passed the sausages to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really—" Oh, this is Harry talking. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm keeper of the keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry?" barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrank back into the shadow. "It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learned it all?" "All what?" asked Harry. "All what?" Hagrid thundered. "Now wait just 1 second." He had leapt to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he growled at the Dursley, "that this boy knows nothing about anything?"
Okay, he knows about some stuff. He went to school. He's going to school.
Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school, after all, and his marks weren't bad. "I know some things," he said. "I can, do math and stuff." The Hagrid simply waved his wand and said, "About our world, I mean. Your world, my world, your parents' world." "What world?" Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. "Dursley!" he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like Mimble-Wimble. Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. "But you must know about your mum and dad," he said. "I mean, they're famous. You're famous." "What? My mum and dad weren't famous, were they?" You don't know. Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. "You don't know what you are," he said finally. I'm sorry, I don't know why he was Irish. He said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. "Stop!" he commanded. "Stop right there, or I forbid you to tell the boy anything." A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have called under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. "You never told him? Never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him? I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley, and you kept it from it all these years." "Kept what from me?" said Harry eagerly. "Stop! I forbid you!" yelled Uncle Vernon in panic.
Okay, he can't just keep forbidding everything. I forbid you! I forbid you! I forbid you! I forbid you!
Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. "I'll go boil your head, both of you," said Hagrid. "Harry, you're a wizard." There was a silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard.
Can I just pause this right here? Because in the movies and everything, and like on everything, it's like you're a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard.
I don't know. Okay,
It's
I need to reread
I'm
this
sorry.
line now, Becca.
It's frustrating.
But it was a very dramatic part for anyone who hasn't read the book yet. Okay, ready?
Everyone knows Harry's gonna be a wizard now.
One second. You're a wizard, Harry. I'm a what? gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower, and a something good in one, I'd say, once you'd been trained up a bit. With a mum and dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green to Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Master, Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sword, Chief Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confed of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have a place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on 1 September. We await your arrival by no later than 31st of July. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide which to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered, What does it mean they await my owl? Gallopin' Gorgons, that reminds me, said Hagrid, clapping a hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cart horse, and from yet another pocket inside his overcoat he pulled an owl, a real, live, rather ruffled-looking owl. A long quill and a roll of parchment with his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note which Harry could read upside down. Dear Mr. Dumbledore, given Harry his letter, taken him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well. Hagrid. Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamped in his beaks, went to the door, and threw the owl out into the storm. Then he came back and sat down as though this was as normal as talking on the telephone. Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. Where was I? Said Hagrid, but at that moment Uncle Vernon, still ashen-faced, but looking very angry, moved into the firelight. He's not going, he said. Hagrid grunted. I'd like to see a great muggle like you stop him, he said. A what? Said Harry, interested. A muggle, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magic folk, like and it's your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest muggles they ever laid eyes on. We swore when we took him in we'd put a stop to that rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. Swore we'd stamp it out of him. Wizard indeed. You knew, said Harry? You knew I'm a wizard? Knew? Shrieked Anthony suddenly. Knew? Of course we knew. How could you not be, my dratted sister being what she was? Oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared off to that school and came home every holiday with her pockets full of frog spawn turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. But for my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this and Lily that. They're proud of having a witch in the family. She stopped to draw a deep breath and then went ranting on. It seemed she had been wanting to say all of this for years. Then she met that Potter at school, and they left and got married and had you, and of course I knew you'd be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went on and got herself blown up, and we got landed with you. Harry had gone very white. As soon as he found his voice said, blown up? You told me they died in a car crash. Car crash! Roared Hagrid, jumping up so angrily that his Dudley scattered back to their corner. How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage, a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in our whole world knows his name. But why? What happened? Harry asked urgently. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said in a low, worried voice. I had no idea. When Dumbledore told me there might be trouble getting a hold of you, how much you didn't know, and Harry, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you. And someone's gotta. Yeah, can't go off to Hogwarts without knowing. He threw a dirty look at the Dursley. Well, in fact, you know as much as I can tell you. Mind, I can't tell you everything. It's a great mystery, parts of it. He sat down, stared into the fire for a few seconds, and then said, It begins, I suppose, with a person called... But it's incredible you don't know his name. Everyone in the world knows. Who? Well, I don't like saying his name if I can help it. No one does. Why not? Gulping gargoyles. Harry, people are still scared. Blimey, this is difficult. See, there was this wizard who went bad. As bad as you could go. Worse than worse. His name was... Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Could you write it down? Harry suggested. Nah, can't spell it. All right.
Oh my gosh.
Voldemort. Hagrid shuddered. Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for followers. Got him too. Some were afraid, some just wanted a bit of his power. Because he was getting himself power, all right. Dark days, Harry. Didn't know who to trust, didn't dare get friendly with strange wizards or witches. Terrible things happened. He was taken over. Of course, some stood up to him, and he killed him. Horribly. One of the only safe Places left with Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore the only one you know who was afraid of. Didn't dare try taking the school. Not just then, anyway. Now, your mum and dad were as good a wizard as I knew. Head boy and girl in Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why you-know-who never tried to get him on his side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade him. Maybe he just wanted him out of the way. All anyone knows is he turned up in the village where you was living, and on Halloween 10 years ago, you were just a year old, he came to your house then, and Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with a sound like a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's that sad. Knew your mum and dad, and nicer people you can find anywhere. You know who killed him, and then this is the real mystery of things. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose. Maybe he just liked killing by then, but he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? That was no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil curse touches you. Took care of your mum and dad at your house even, but it didn't work on you. And that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after that. After he decided to kill him, no one except you. And he killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. The McKinnons, the Bones, the Pruitts. And you was only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw again the blinding flash of green light, more clearly than he had ever remembered it before. And he remembered something else. For the first time in his life, a high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. Took you right from the ruined house myself when Dumbledore's orders. Brought you to this lot. Load of old tosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He'd almost forgotten that the Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have got back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid and his fists were clenched. Now you listen here, boy, he snarled. I accept there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And as for all this about your parents, well, they're a weirdo, no denying it. And the world's better off without them, in my opinion. As for all they got getting mixed up with these withering types, just what I expected. Always knew they'd come to a sticky end. But at that moment, Hagrid leapt from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat. Pointing this at Uncle Vernon like a sword, he said, I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you. One more word. In danger of being speared on the end of an umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, breathing heavily and sitting back down on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask, hundreds of them. But what happened to you-know-who? Good question, Harry. Disappeared, vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. Make you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery, see? He was getting more and more powerful. Why'd he go? Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion. Don't know if he had enough human in him left to die. Some say he's still up there buying his time, but I don't believe it. People who was on his side came back to Rara. Some of them came out of kind of trances. Don't reckon they could have done it if he was coming back. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his power, too weak to carry on. 'Cause something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on that night he hadn't counted on. I don't know what it was. No one does. But something about you stumped him, all right. Hagrid looked at Harry with a warmth and respect blazing in his eyes, but Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a horrible mistake. A wizard? Him? How could he be? He spent his life being clotted by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he really was a wizard, why hadn't they been turned into warty toads every time he tried to lock him in his cupboard? If he'd once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Hagrid, he said quietly, I think you must have made a mistake. I don't think I can be a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, eh? Never made things happen when you was scared or angry? Harry looked into the fire. Now he came to think about it. Every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened when he, Harry, had been upset or angry. Chased by Dudley's gang, he had somehow found himself out of their reach. Dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut, he managed to make it all grow back. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, hadn't he got his revenge without even realizing he was doing it? Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling, and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. See, said Hagrid, Harry Potter not a wizard? You wait. You'll be right famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give him without a fight. Haven't I told you he's not going, he hissed. He's going to Stonewall High, and you'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he's all sorts of rubbish, spellbooks and wands, and if he wants to go, a great muggle like you won't stop him, growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James Potter's son going to Hogwarts. You're mad. His name's been down ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there, and he won't know himself. He'll be with the youngsters of his own sort for a change, and he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts ever had, Albus Dumbledore. I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over their heads. Never, he thundered, insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me. He brought the umbrella swishing down through the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violet light, a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and the next second Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his bottom, howling in pain. When he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pigtail poking through the hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the other room. He cast one last terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind them. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. Shouldn't have lost me temper, he said ruefully, but it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig. But I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway there wasn't much left to do. He cast a sideways look at Harry under his brushy eyebrows. Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts. Said, I'm not supposed to do magic, strictly speaking. I was allowed to do a bit to follow you and get your letters to you and stuff. One of the reasons I was so keen to take on the job. Why aren't you supposed to do magic? Asked Harry. Oh, well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled, to tell you the truth, in my 3rd year. They snapped me wand and half and everything, but Dumbledore let me stay on as gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore. Why were you expelled? It's getting late and we've got lots to do tomorrow, said Hagrid loudly. Gotta get up to town and get all your bucks and that. He took up a thick black coat and threw it to Harry. You can keep under that, he said. Don't mind if it wriggles a bit. I think I still got a couple of dormice in one of the pockets. End of chapter 4. I don't know about anyone else. My voice hurts. Okay, thoughts on chapter 4? I fell asleep. You laugh a lot in your sleep. Well, chapter 4 was basically just Hagrid being like, "You're a wizard, Harry," and Harry being like, "I'm a what?"
And then he's like, "No, I'm not a wizard. Wait, I'm a wizard."
No, one of my favorite lines in the movie is, "But I can't be a wizard. I'm Harry, just Harry." Yeah.
We watched the movie the other day.
Yeah, that's why we're talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, write your thoughts about the chapters in the comments.
I just realizing when I remember the movie so much right now.
Yeah.
And I forgot we watched it.
Mhm. The movie paces much quicker than the book does, but still, the book has a lot more fun parts.
The second movie is like 5 hours long.
Oh my goodness, it was never ending. We were watching the extended version though, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, but so we were, then how like when we were driving, a lot was the movie.
Then we had no time.
Because it just kept going on and
Every
on
time we
and
thought it was gonna end, it was just
on.
kept going. Okay, let's move on to our next segment. Questioning Quirrell. Do you have any questions, Becca? We had questions and then we do a bit of trivia.
Gotcha. Not really.
Okay, well, I have a trivia question for you. What was the first thing Hagrid said when he walked through the door?
Can I have tea?
Yeah. My next question is, can you do a Hagrid voice?
Nope, probably not.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Oh my gosh, that did not sound like you.
Not at all. That was terrible. Okay, and our question for you guys to write in our comments is...
That's what asking me. Was I supposed to come up with that?
Yes.
Are we supposed to start this?
Okay, well, our question for you will be... Where was the first... No.
Where was the hotel located? Like, What's the address of the hotel?
What was the address of the hotel? No cheating. Write it in the comments.
Write it in the comments, and we will tell you who's going next week. And guys, please comment. We haven't got any comments yet, but please comment. We want to know what you think about our videos. And I also have a question for you today. So our next milestone of things is how many subscribers we have will be 25. And so we were wondering what you guys thought we should do when we got to 25. If we should have a contest where you can win some Hufflepuffers stuff and maybe something else. B
And about us video.
and about this video, and we're telling you about how we decided to do this podcast. Or C, Tasha suggested it the other day.
Oh, yes. It was to be a special guest on our show.
Oh yeah, but we let special guests on anyway.
Yeah, so also comment if you want to be a special guest. Or comment just to let us know how cringe you think we are.
Yeah.
That's fine too.
Yeah, but definitely comment or text us or email us if you want to be a special guest, and then just tell us your wand stuff, and you can tell us that on our episode. And so yeah, I had another option for C, we'll do a special movie episode where we do a watch through and free commentary of the movie.
Okay, so.
You can vote just in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Let us know.
Let's move on.
Segment 5. If I were a wizard.
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 Okay, about our characters. Becca, Moon, would you like to go first?
No, you can.
Okay, so
And make sure to write it down this time.
as you all remember, Alana, who loves magic, is
So today we're talking about their early childhood.
okay. Well, as I said last time, both her parents are witches. She grew up. She has an older sister and a younger sister.
Okay, so just copy your life here.
So her older sister
It's named Karen.
no was always
Her younger sister's named Lainey.
So the older sister was very, very, very good at magic. And she went on. See, she now works at the ministry. She works at the Ministry of Magic.
Uh-huh.
And her younger sister is just starting. Well, she hasn't started at Hogwarts yet, but she will soon. And they always got along, but fight sometimes. Sorry, you guys are probably really confused. I'm referencing a conversation we had yesterday.
I would interview Tasha about her life, and I was like, and your sisters and you don't ever fight. She's like, okay, Tasha. And I'm like, okay, your sisters and you fight constantly.
That's constantly. But yeah, so she always does magic when she's not supposed to. But now she's trying to be better because she knows she's not allowed and she's underage. Yeah, so you can go.
Oh yeah. So I'm just looking at the thing, and so this is how much time we've been recording for in the tiny look and the big look.
There's
Wow.
a big difference.
Yeah. It's hard to explain. We use an app called Movie Maker to edit everything. And I'll go back to Moon. So she grew up in Canada, and now I'm having my life. She's the only time. But she's one of my Eliases. Eliases? Yeah, I've got 3 main characters I use, 4 main characters I use, 3 main characters, whatever. Okay, so, she grew up with her best friend being a girl named Ariel and a girl named Hope, because I use the same names for everything, and a girl named Luna.
Okay.
That was her friend group, because they use the same names for everything.
Mhm.
I just copy character after character after character.
So what did they do?
Okay, so they like to eat subs.
Okay, I would like to add something. So Alana also grew up in Canada, but her family moved to London, right before her older sister started school.
And so, Becca Moon was going to go to Ivermorny, but then they had a family friend, and she went to Ivermorny, but she didn't like it there and stuff. So they ended up going to Hogwarts instead. So they moved to London. Well, they stayed in Canada, but she moved to London to go to school.
Mhm.
And so she misses her family and friends a lot, but she loves Hogwarts. And in her first year, she's also a Muggle born.
Mhm.
And when she went to Hogwarts, when they told her she was a Hufflepuff, she was like, isn't that the house that just like isn't any of the other houses?
Wow, and then all the Hufflepuffs were really offended, and were like, "Let me teach you."
Yeah, and then she was like, and then afterwards she realized that Hufflepuffs are just like have all the combined qualities of the other houses mixed around in a cauldron, and which makes it better.
But the Hufflepuffs are kind and they're nice, and see, it's why the reason they don't have any glory, because they always let everyone else have their glory.
Yes.
Also,
But don't cross a Hufflepuff
no,
if you care about your well-being.
they're Animal the Badger for a reason. I also forgot to mention something. See, I said the older sister works at the ministry, but she doesn't yet. She's still in school. Yeah.
She will go on to work in the ministry.
Yeah, that's her plan right now.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't forget to tell us about your dear character.
In the comments.
And now
Please
on.
comment.
Yes.
We have no comments.
Now on
We
to.
need comments.
From Hogwarts to Hollywood!
Okay. I just want to say that we were very strange when we named all these segments. So we're sorry for the weird names.
No, they're all great. Don't
Are
listen
they?
to her.
Are they?
Yes.
Are they? Hogwarts to Hollywood is the strangest one.
I love it.
The strangest
See, we've been complaining about the movie the whole time. Actually, this episode, I think we did more complaining about the book? Question mark?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
I'm in shock.
I'm in shock.
I'm in shock. Did we do any complaining at all though?
A little bit maybe, but not much. Do you have any complaints about the book regarding those 2 chapters we read?
Not really. I don't have any complaints about the book. Or the movie.
Very loud, I don't know. You didn't either.
Alright.
So,
Okay. Really?
we are going to move on to Yule Ball. I know we said we weren't going to do it, but we're going to sing
Jingle bells.
You sing along too.
Add the lyrics first? Never mind. None of them. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the field we go, laughing all the way. Bells and boxes ring.
Making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a swing song tonight.
Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. That was the Yule Ball.
Happy New Year,
Happy New Year's, everyone, and I don't remember.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye!